More than a quarter of Australians say they're financially struggling, according to the results of the Australia Talks National Survey. Here's Casey Briggs.
This is the minimum wage in Australia right now. 29% of Australians think that's about right. Around half of us think it should be somewhat higher. Another 14% think it should be much higher. And very few think it should be lower or non-existent. 27% of respondents in the Australia Talks survey said they often have difficulty making ends meet. And that's actually slightly lower than in 2019. But remember also, the survey was fielded in March, before the extra coronavirus supplement on job seeker payments was removed. Women are more likely than men to be struggling to make ends meet, and you'll be completely unsurprised to learn that people on the minimum wage or lower are the most likely to be doing it tough. 53% of people on less than $600 a week, that's about $31,000 a year, agree. But also, around 1 in 10 people earning more than $3,000 a week, that's $156,000 a year, say they're struggling too. Amid the economic turmoil of the past year, Australians have mixed views on the state of the job market. We asked how well or poorly Australians think the country is doing around job opportunities. 39% said the country is doing well. 39% said the country is doing poorly. And 23% sat on the fence. If push came to shove, about 2/3 of us are confident we could find another job if we had to. But that confidence drops dramatically for people aged over 50.
And Fiona Guthrie is the Chief Executive of Financial Counselling Australia. We're going to have a chat to her about these survey findings on people saying they're struggling to make ends meet. She joins us now from Brisbane. Fiona Guthrie, welcome. So what's been the experience of financial counsellors through the pandemic? Have you noticed any change in demand for services?
Well, it was really surprising for us. We expected at the start of the pandemic that demand would just go through the roof. And in fact, the opposite happened, so that we had about a 30% drop in demand for services, 170,000 phone calls on the National Debt Helpline in 2019, 130,000 in 2020. And that was because of the really good government support packages, industry support packages. But of course, they're all now finishing and we're starting to see demand increase again.
Yeah. And so it's still the case that about 1/3 of people find they're financially struggling. And this was kind of roughly the same when we did the survey a couple of years back. What are the major issues contributing to about 1/3 of people finding they're financially struggling?
Yeah, well, that wouldn't surprise financial counsellors at all, because one of the really important findings in this survey, and it's such a great big sample size, is that you're more likely to struggle if you've got less money. Now, that should be common sense, really, but it's what we see every day in financial counselling because we're helping people who are struggling with bills and debts. We know there are a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck. We know there are over 3 million Australians living in households below the poverty line. But we also know there's a group of people, and the survey confirms this as well, probably with high income and high assets, but high levels of debt, and they're also struggling. So financial stress can happen across the board, but particularly correlated and pretty obviously to not having enough money, and that's a core problem still in Australian society.
And what's the gender breakdown here?
Well, again, from the survey, we know that women tend to struggle more than men, and that's probably not surprising, to do with the gender pay gap, the fact that women work part-time, they're more likely to be casual, more likely to be single parents. We know older women, more likely to be at risk of homelessness, one of the fastest growing groups. So generally, more women than men are finding themselves in financial difficulty. And so again, it's really good to see government and our Parliament really talking about women's economic security, because we need to fix this. It's really an unequal gender distribution when it comes to financial hardship and financial stress.
And so what are some of the strategies you think governments should use to help people, not only talking about the gender breakdown, but more broadly about people struggling?
We've been saying, together with our colleagues in the Australian Council of Social Services, that when people don't have a job, they need to make sure they have enough money to live on. So it was really good that the government increased the level of job seeker, but it's still below the poverty line. And the survey shows this so clearly, that if you don't have enough money to make ends meet, you are going to struggle. It's just the maths. So one of the most important things we could do is to make sure that when people are are out of work, there aren't enough jobs to go around, they have enough money to live on. That's really, really just probably the foundational thing to fix. A debate in Australia about what sort of society it is that allows people to live below the poverty line, including 500,000 children.
And so what are some of the strategies that individuals can use?
Well, people who are experiencing financial stress are often really overwhelmed, very upset, sometimes suicidal. And so there's lots of things you can do to address that yourself. So there's lots of information on Money Smart's website, for example. But if you come and speak to a financial counsellor on the National Debt Helpline on 1800 007 007, we'll talk through options like what you can do to maximise your income, reduce your expenses, about what you can do around financial hardship, renegotiating payment arrangements. So there's a whole lot of things that can be done, but the foundation is having enough money in the first place.
And we've been having that discussion about that allowance for so many years now, and there was that increase, but as you say, it's not substantial enough. What do you think that payment should be lifted to?
It should be lifted to the poverty line. The poverty line's about $65 a day. At the moment, it's about $44 a day, the level of Newstart. So it's very simple mathematics. We know what it is to have enough money to make ends meet. We know from 60,000 Australians that about 25% of them don't have enough money to make ends meet. We need to try and make the policy settings work so that statistic is changed the next time you do this survey.
Okay, Fiona Guthrie, thanks so much for having a chat to us this morning from Brisbane.
It's a pleasure, thank you.